You know how we keep hearing about cancel culture and free speech lately? It seems like everyone has an opinion on whether cancel culture is a good thing or if it's just another way of silencing people. So let's talk about it. Some people believe cancel culture is a real threat to free speech, while others argue it's just about holding people accountable for their words or actions. It's not as simple as it sounds, so let's break it down and see why people feel so strongly on both sides. Cancel culture and the chilling effect on speech. The first big argument against cancel culture is that it can scare people into silence. Imagine you're about to share your honest thoughts on a sensitive topic, but then you think, what if people take it the wrong way? What if I get cancelled? That's what critics mean by the chilling effect. It's not that people don't have the right to say what they want, but they're scared of the backlash, especially on social media. Think about someone who tweets something controversial. Even if it's just a poorly phrased opinion, suddenly that person might be facing hundreds or even thousands of angry replies, hashtags calling for them to be fired, and sometimes even threats. As a result, people might start holding back on expressing their thoughts, and that limits the kind of open conversations we're supposed to be able to have in a free society. For example, comedian Kevin Hart once faced massive backlash over old tweets, and even though he had already apologized, the controversy cost him the chance to host the Oscars. For people like Hart, this kind of public shaming over past mistakes can be career-changing, even when the person has evolved or apologized. This creates an environment where even jokes, opinions or comments from years ago can be dug up, analyzed and used to cancel someone. Cancel culture as mob justice. Another concern is that cancel culture can sometimes feel like mob justice, where the crowd decides who deserves to be punished. And unlike a courtroom, where evidence is examined and both sides get to tell their story, cancel culture is more immediate and emotional. When a person is cancelled, they might lose their job, their reputation, or their platform without any kind of fair process. Take the case of James Gunn, a filmmaker who was fired by Disney over tweets he had posted years earlier. These tweets, which were meant to be jokes but were clearly offensive, resurfaced years after the fact, and Disney quickly cut ties with him without much discussion. Eventually, after public outcry from fans and actors who worked with him, he was rehired. But this shows how quickly cancel culture can turn someone's career upside down, even if people later reconsider the decision. The problem here, critics argue, is that the power to cancel someone doesn't always rest with informed decision makers. Instead, it's often driven by outrage on social media, where things can spiral out of control quickly. In this way, cancel culture can feel like censorship, not from the government, but from a large vocal group of people. Free speech versus accountability. On the flip side, supporters of cancel culture argue that it's not about silencing anyone, it's about holding people accountable for their actions or words. They say free speech doesn't mean you can say whatever you want without facing consequences. In other words, yes, you can say something offensive, but don't be surprised if people criticize you for it. One famous example is Harvey Weinstein, the Hollywood producer who was cancelled after multiple women came forward with allegations of sexual harassment and assault. While some might argue that cancel culture took him down, others see it as a way for victims to finally hold a powerful figure accountable when legal systems had failed them for years. In this way, cancel culture can be a tool for justice, giving marginalized voices a way to push back against people in power who have been getting away with harmful behavior for too long. Another example is when people boycott brands or companies because of a stance they took, such as when Chick-fil-A faced backlash over its donations to anti-LGBTQ organizations. Some view this as cancel culture in action, but for others, it's just a way of expressing their own values through where they spend their money. It's not about silencing the company, but about choosing not to support something you don't agree with. Free market of ideas or suppression. Some people look at cancel culture as part of the free market of ideas. The idea here is that the public will naturally reject harmful or offensive ideas in favor of better ones. If you express an opinion that most people find offensive, then cancel culture is just society rejecting that idea. For example, when someone makes a racist comment and gets cancelled, this could be seen as society saying, "We don't tolerate racism." In a way, it's a good thing because it reflects how social norms are evolving. Cancel culture can push people to be more thoughtful about what they say, and it might help us create a more inclusive society where harmful ideas are less accepted. But here's where it gets tricky. Sometimes cancel culture can go too far and suppress opinions that aren't necessarily harmful but are just unpopular. A classic example is J.K. Rowling, the famous author of the Harry Potter series. She has faced ongoing criticism and cancellations over her views on gender identity. Some argue that her views are harmful to the transgender community, while others believe she's simply expressing her perspective on a complex issue. In situations like this, cancel culture feels less like the free market of ideas and more like suppressing viewpoints that don't align with certain beliefs. Is there a middle ground? What's becoming clear is that cancel culture isn't just black and white, it's full of grey areas. Many people agree that there are times when cancel culture is necessary, like holding powerful figures accountable when legal systems or institutions have failed. But there's also growing recognition that it can become harmful when it's too extreme or disproportionate to the offence. One suggestion is that we should think more about proportionality. Is the backlash someone faces really fair for what they said or did? Is there room for people to apologize and grow? Or is cancel culture creating a situation where there's no path to redemption? Maybe someone made a mistake, learned from it, and genuinely wants to do better. In those cases, instead of cancelling them permanently, should we give them a chance to show that they've changed? For example, people like YouTuber Shane Dawson have been cancelled for offensive content made years ago. While his behavior was inappropriate, some argue that he has apologized and grown since then. Should someone like that get a second chance, or should they be cancelled indefinitely? Another thing to consider is that free speech protection mainly applies to government censorship, not necessarily to how people respond in public or how companies react to backlash. If a company fires someone for their views because of public outrage, it's technically not violating free speech laws, but it's still part of the cancel culture conversation. This is where the lines blur. While free speech is protected from government interference, private companies and individuals are not obligated to provide a platform for every opinion, especially if they face intense pressure from the public. Conclusion. So, is cancel culture really a threat to free speech? Well, it depends on how you look at it. For some, it's a way to suppress people's voices and limit open discussion. For others, it's a tool to hold people accountable for harmful behavior. The challenge lies in finding a balance between protecting free expression and ensuring that speech isn't used as a weapon to harm or dehumanize others. In the end, maybe the key is understanding that cancel culture isn't inherently good or bad. It's how we use it that matters. If we can use it thoughtfully, giving people room to learn from their mistakes while holding the truly harmful accountable, it might help create a better, more inclusive world. But if it turns into a knee-jerk reaction where everyone is quick to cancel anyone they disagree with, it risks stifling the very freedom of speech it's supposed to protect.